Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Hello beautiful people, you're welcome to the Snap Talk with your girl Teddy Tenjo every Saturday right from 6 to 7.
Napo zinatwajira flat tami. Tuchayambala ko kugoyo obutukwata.
Wajana ku body shaming. Speak up. Gendo ba confronting. Obagambe echo kyemukola si kirungi.
Towerabira nti tuli wano ku the Alternative Dig Talk. Mukwano gwange gwaliye. Topic kiji wandiyagadde twogereko. Is it about family?
Nekati ze tata wange amanyira nkola n'obuvunanyizibwa nyina bungi. Era agezaako n'anyamba yambako yanda.
Naye kumukubira kumubuuzaako. Noga mama we bali kunzaala.
Is it outside family? Is it society? Oh, could it be relationships?
Come and visit, call me. Simanyanga I miss you bichi. Especially in better your good sinungi.
Naye omuntu akwagalira mu season yabata kwagala ze nkubuulira.
Just be commenting nga topic yona gyandiyagadde twogereko tujja kwa tujogera kwano ku the Alternative Dig Talk ku share enganzi the Snap Talk.
Fellow citizens, following the sequence of events, Uganda seems to be at political crossroads.
I'm not a servant of anybody.
Madam, I know the law.
As such, Alternative Digital brings you the Interface Show with retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye.
Let's keep on the same page on Alternative Digital.
As he gives you the alternatives on the transition question, rule of law, human rights and freedom, youth inclusion in governance, economic stagnation, as he confirms.
I'll be always here Saturday from 10 a.m. in the morning. Be there.
Don't miss the live discussion on the Alternative Uganda, Digital TV Facebook pages, and the Alternative Uganda YouTube channel.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Welcome back from that break. We are still on the Interface Show with Dr. Kizza Besigye, trying to go through and analyze some issues and offer some alternative ideas if he was to be in the leadership. And as a Ugandan, like you, like me, how better can we make Uganda for all than for individuals? So as we conclude on this issue of US African Leaders Summit 2022, we would like to hear from Dr. Besigye. What are some of the key issues that you had expected or would have been addressed by Mr. Museveni in this summit, given the fact that most Ugandans have been crying, complaining, alleging, and suffering from the human rights violations against them by the state? And we saw some Ugandans demonstrating on different streets of in Washington and other cities and states over human rights violations in Uganda, and the same didn't want him to be part of the summit. So, and we had Mr. Museveni never addressed or talked about such issues, and yet most Ugandans expected, at least given the fact that our image internationally in regards to human rights is not all that good. Doctor, what were some of the key issues that you had expected him to address?
Well, you see, Mr. Museveni could not certainly address himself on the issues that he has created himself. He could not talk about human rights that he abuses. It would be totally unexpected, and even if he was confronted, and I believe some people will be confronting him, if he maybe meets journalists or whatever, I'm sure they will confront him with those issues of how he has been rigging elections or overthrowing
the constitution,
electoral processes, overthrowing the constitution, you know, terrorizing his citizens and killing them and stealing, you know, the corruption. Every corruption case ends up in his office, you know, all the thieves, that's where they have refuge and so on. So some people will raise those issues, I suspect, if they get the chance. If he talks to the media, I'm sure any media outlet that he meets will be holding these issues high on their agenda, the regional conflicts that he has been involved in, and so on and so forth. Those, it's not him, he can never raise them, and even when asked, he will, as usual, deflect them. You know, he will not respond to them
as expected,
with the necessary diligence that would be expected. What is more likely that he could have raised, and I don't know whether, you know, he raised it, because you know, talking, of course, he says his main interest is to attract people to come and invest here. And you know, President Biden told him and all like him that investors, you see, will come where they see good governance. Investors will not come to deal with your thieves, you know, who are extracting bribes at every turn. You know, he said investors will come where there is, you know, security, where there is
transparency.
Yes, where you have, you know, human rights respected. They will not come to witness all kinds of hastes and criminality going on in the country, and so on and so forth. So he said, basically he was telling them, you are the obstacles
of your own development,
of what you are looking for, you know. So that is what he says he's mainly looking for. But maybe one could have prudently, since that one is, again, as he has been advised and should have known, investment will go wherever there is opportunity, you know, and the right environment. You don't need to attract it. It just...
It's automatic.
The people who have money to invest, they are busy sniffing all over the place for opportunities. You not put their money and make profit. You don't have to. Once you see that you are involved in, I don't know, attracting, you know that you are the problem. You are the problem. So what more urgently I think would have been an engagement is to find maybe creative opportunities on how to increase our own knowledge, you know, get maybe cooperation that takes some of our people to get apprenticeship in certain areas of interest, you know, where we could send our people to gain knowledge and experience and skills and so on. How maybe we can transfer some technology in certain areas like health, where we have been fighting to have access to information on how to make vaccines. You know, vaccines that save lives, we think should not be just a commercial, item, or an item of a commercial interest only, but that it needs to be shared so that lives globally are saved. And the engagements, in fact, even Africa, one of their engagements should have been on how to democratize knowledge that saves lives, rather than being, because even it's the development of that knowledge, we all contribute to it in one way or another.
True.
Certainly the governments of America, the governments of Europe, the governments of other developed countries contribute the greatest amount in research and development. And so once this knowledge has been acquired, how do we share it? You can see like the vaccines and the vaccine apartheid that there was. Even now, it is Africa that is unvaccinated, literally, on all these terrible things, and which tend to, some come from here. You've seen the development of Ebola vaccine. Our people are now participating as experimental, samples to test what they have developed there. But if it is approved that
it's effective,
this Ebola virus vaccine is effective, we have an effective vaccine against the Congolese Ebola, but not the Sudan Ebola. And there will be other Ebolas. But once they get the vaccine, it is their vaccine, and we have to pay through our noses to access it. And we can only access what they give us. We cannot, if we needed to produce
our own vaccine,
and massively, like was needed in COVID, because in COVID, the production was far less than the speed at which the world needed those vaccines. And they only supplied their populations fast. So the idea that we, share into this knowledge and technology is a very, very critical matter. This is what Africa should be negotiating, rather than negotiating the obvious. Investors will come if you create the right environment. In terms of food security, one of the biggest threats to food security is now Monsanto, and its technology, genetic technology, which is producing seeds that they control. And those seeds come and infect our own indigenous seeds and destroy them, and we have no capacity, therefore, of recreating our food, multiplying our seeds. We are now entirely dependent, enslaved. Our food security is entirely enslaved on them. These are the more critical issues that such engagements should be addressing, not whether they will give us some money to buy food, or investors to come and invest. Our people have enough capability even to be investors if you create the right environment
for them.
Yes. So yeah, it was. It's unfortunate that you had just people talking about water. We can develop the water here. Water
is not our problem.
No, we have a lot of fresh water. We can develop it and distribute it. It does not take rocket science. Even the people in Makerere have enough knowledge that they can pass around to our people on how to move or purify water and move it around and do whatever. So the more critical things are the things that we should be negotiating on, which is all these relationships, including even the finances, how the world world financial system works, which is heavily tipped against us and against even the other emerging countries. So those, I think, would be the more relevant issues of engagement, and not, we want investors.
We want to conserve the environment that is the one that you've destroyed yourselves.
Yes.
Anyway, it's a big topic, and we can't exhaust it in just 1 or 2 hours. So let's just make a pause on that and have a look at Ongwen Dominic, former LRA commander, who in 2021 had appealed over his 25-year sentence on over 11 grounds with over 60 defense, and all the grounds were the appellate court agreed with the lower chamber, and they upheld the sentence of 25, though they referred the same to the lower court to see whether they can either reduce, but most of the grounds he lost. It should be remembered that in January 2015, Ongwen handed himself to the US forces in Central African Republic on December 6, 2016, and the trial began until May 2021, when the ICC handed him 25 years before his appeal that was ruled on Thursday this week. In his defense, he claimed that he was a victim of war after being adopted at the age of 9, and what he did, he had no control over himself in that period, but the court never listened to his 90 grounds of appeal, and where he claimed that in the judgment it was he alleged illegalities, procedure, and factual errors, and that mounted to his sentence. So all this happened, and we are waiting to see whether the 25 years are either reduced or maintained. Let me ask the producer to give us a brief of the verdict being delivered on Thursday from Hague.
The lack of evidence which would corroborate a historical diagnosis, and based on the expert opinion of mental health professionals who did not identify any mental disease or defect in Mr. Ongwe during the period of the charges. Likewise, the trial chamber rejected the ground for excluding criminal responsibility by way of duress on the basis that there was no evidence at all to hold that Mr. Ongwen was subjected to a threat or imminent death or imminent or continuing serious bodily harm to himself or another person at the time of his conduct underlying the charged crimes. Consequently, the trial chamber found that Mr. Ongwen's guilt had been established beyond any reasonable doubt. In concluding the summary of this judgment, and given that the relevant findings of the trial chamber have been confirmed, the appeals chamber wishes to recognize the extreme suffering experienced by the victims of the crimes committed by Mr. Ongwen during the time relevant to the charges. Appropriate relief. For the reasons set out in detail in the judgment, the appeals chamber rejects all the defense's grounds of appeal and confirms unanimously the conviction decision.
Yeah, that's the verdict, and his sentence of 25 years was upheld and referred to the lower chamber. So our question, the case too has taken 7 years from including the first ruling to the apparent court's ruling. What's your comment on the speed, the expeditious hearing of the case compared to our local cases in criminal and such cases?
Well, I think the court did a fairly efficient execution of its mandate in the trial of such a nature, where the trial is taking place in another continent from where the alleged crime was committed, and where the evidence gathering and the witnesses, securing witnesses to go and give evidence, and all the logistical challenges involved for all the processes of hearing and judgment and appeal and judgment on appeal to have ended within such a time, I think is not a very long time in the circumstances, the complexity of the nature of the matter and the remoteness of where it is being had. We've seen that here in Uganda, where he comes from, even for the case to be heard in the first instance,
the lower court,
in the high court, a case, any capital offense to be heard, if you are heard within 5 years, you are lucky. You are very lucky. Some spend 7 years longer, just to be heard. And later on, the appeals to be heard and concluded takes,
You serve your sentence and...
Yes, the sentence will be over even before the appeals
is heard and disposed of.
Have been disposed of. I really don't think that this is... I think what is more important maybe to address is how Ongwen himself found himself there as somebody who was a child when the war began, and who was sucked into the conflict and committed whatever he is accused of having committed in a process in which he had no say in how it began, in how it progressed, and how it sucked him. And, so in many ways, I have a lot of sympathy for those who participated in a rebellion like he did, a rebellion in which they were really themselves victims. This I witnessed it firsthand myself when we were in the Luwero War. You know, there were people who were living in Luwero who did not even have a clue about how the war started. They even never heard of the attack on Kabamba or why Kabamba was attacked.
They just found themselves trapped.
They were going about their normal daily duties, going to school and so on. Some school kids, like there was a school called Masulita, which is in Masulita there. They were all, you know, trapped in the war. Their headmaster had to join the struggle, and eventually all the kids who were in Masulita secondary school, who had left home just going for another term, like any other kid goes to school for another term, most of those kids who were in Masulita secondary ended up being fighters. Being fighters. Some who were girls were married by commanders and produced children in the war. So wars are extremely disruptive of ordinary people's lives who have no clue about how the war started, or what were the drivers for the war to start and so on, but who have no choice in their getting sucked in. And who once sucked in also have very little choice in how they behave. Because if you are sucked into an armed organization, it is commanded. And you have to follow the command. And if you don't follow the command, you are in trouble. So in that respect, you know, I have, you know, I know that the rebels indeed commit offenses, heinous offenses, actually. Some in an effort to survive themselves, some outrightly, recklessly, and needlessly, you know. But we should interrogate how those conflicts start, that then engender those things to happen. How do the conflicts start? Who takes responsibility for these conflicts to start and to continue for as long as they do? You see? The war in northern Uganda is a war that in many ways should never have started if I think there had been prudent management of the security military situation at the time. It is possible that that war would not have started, because the people who were there, who were fighters in northern Uganda, they had been defeated, they had nothing to do. They could have been managed differently from the way they were managed in the that frightened and threatened them to withdraw into the Sudan, and later on, while in the Sudan, to have a reason to come back and fight because of the atrocities that were also taking place at the time. So, you know, the war cannot be blamed entirely on people that they were just fighting to take over power. Some of the reasons that war began were people defending themselves to survive again from the way those who now had authority were approaching them. But secondly, the war having started should not have lasted 20 years. That a war, an internal war, is the most, disastrous thing you can have, because you cannot define your citizen, your taxpayer, as the enemy. And you are hunting down your own citizens. You know, the people who would be paying tax, producing what, they are the ones you are hunting down. And when you kill them, you say, I've killed enemies. But they are your own people. You know, it's not like a war where you have maybe country to country conflict. But this is an internal conflict. And every effort must be made to resolve the reasons why violent conflict arises within a country. You know, it must take absolute priority. And it cannot be resolved by just violence. You must deal with whether they are unreasonable reasons that caused the war to start. They must be addressed, because they caused those people who took up guns, they were strong enough for them to take up guns. So you must address them in a way that is satisfactory to cause that desire to fight for those reasons to end. As we have seen, even in areas where war has lasted 50 years, in internal wars, at the end of the day, the only solution is political. It's not violence that you will use to come, just destroy the others and cause them to accept your will endlessly. You can defeat them for some time, they will come back even more aggrieved. So the war should never have lasted 20 years, in which case some of these young people like Ongwen
were trapped in,
would have been saved, that agony of being sucked into the Congo War and dying there. Many died there. Ongwen is one of the lucky ones. He survived, he's still around. He will serve his sentence, I believe, and come back and possibly still has some future. But there are many who lost their future completely. And also, Ongwen, on the other hand, is maybe a bit unfortunate, because they are those whom he was fighting with who have come out of the war and are busy.
And given amnesty.
Not even some, not even known. They just got out of the war and joined,
mixed to the public.
Yes, joined back in the... Because don't forget, you see, that war was very supported by the people. Over Choli, the people of Lango, the people of northern Uganda supported the war. So they will not expose those who come back and have not died in the war and mingle with them. They will rejoin and start life again. And
maybe because he was of high rank.
Yes, in his case, yes. But, so there are many others who were like him, who are back, who have not even gone through any process, and who have reintegrated and are doing their own business. But also, you see, the reason they were fighting, even when you think that you have maybe defeated Kony and Kony has gone, if you have not resolved the causes for which they were fighting, the war is not over. That we should also not forget that because the guns are silent, that the war is over. No, the war is not just the absence of people firing guns. It is the resolution of the conflicts that turn into violence. And the main thrust of the war in northern Uganda was about exclusion. People feeling that they are not part of Uganda. Marginalization, you know, that they don't have opportunities, and that if they try to raise voices, that they are aggressed, they are repressed, the repression, you know, the use of force to repress. And this is not just limited to northern Uganda. That is a huge problem nationally. It was more evident in northern Uganda at the beginning because the forces that had taken power before the NRA took power were mainly dominated by people from the northern part of Uganda. We should remember that the force led by Tito Okello came from Gulu to overthrow Obote. And so there was a feeling that the Acholi force was being excluded then because they wanted, because they had been removed from power and they wanted to reclaim the power, to regain their power. And so the other parts of the country were not as excluded and aggressed. But now we have seen that aggression and exclusion
cutting across,
going all over. You know, what happened in Kasese was, you know, horrific.
In Teso.
What happened in Teso? What is happening in Buganda now? So the reasons that war started in the north are now all over
the country.
You're
on a time bomb.
And that's why it's extremely worrying. This is why I'm saying that we should not just look at Ongwen as just a fighter. We must address the reasons that sucked Ongwen into a war. How did that war begin? Have the issues been resolved? Or we are waiting for other Ongwens? And they will come. Other Ongwens are there. You may be an Ongwen sitting here with me. So now with all these attacks on police stations, some people are breaking the pylons of electricity. They are collapsing left and right. Who is doing all this and why? The same anger that started violence in northern Uganda, that anger is all over the country now. And that's why it's absolutely important that we take a step back and deal with all this. This is why we say we must have a transition, because in that transition, we must address this, you know, national anger that we all have against
truth-telling.
Yes,
and
yes, absolutely. We must reconcile the country, but we cannot reconcile it unless the criminal organization that has created all this is out of the way. So our first priority must be to remove this criminal organization and then have a transition that heals the country, that creates a new consensus on how we move forward, and then we move. But yes, so Ongwen's story, I think, has ended. I think he will be sitting to serve his sentence. I must say that he's...
so first 7 years off.
Yeah, he's lucky to serve his sentence in Europe. Because the conditions there are not the same as where we normally go ourselves. Yeah, in Luzira or
your yellow uniform
or other places. Yeah, they also have their uniforms, but they sleep on beds with all amenities. They eat good food. They
actually, it looks safe here.
Yes,
than most Ugandans here.
Yes, they eat good food. They watch TV. They engage in all sports facilities and so on. So they, except that they have no freedom to go wherever they want. Their lives in prison are certainly far better than the greatest majority of Ugandans. I think Ugandans would love to live in the prison where he is. So
Doctor, on that very point, do you think we need these courts, the ICC, International Court of Justice? Isn't it a tool for neocolonialism?
No, it is not. You see,
and maybe interfering in the sovereignty of other countries.
You see, the international system, like, which is what inspired the creation of the United Nations. Conflict was conflict between nations that needed to be regulated and discussed, create a forum for relations to be discussed, conflicts to be resolved. And that's why there is the Security Council and so on and so forth. And indeed, those who aggress others to be judged, like the International Court of Justice, like you saw when we plundered the Congo. Congo ran to court. Where would it run if there was no such a court? And another country comes and aggresses you? If there is no framework for resolving that conflict, then Congo would pay back by also attacking and so on and so forth, causing world insecurity to escalate. So the International Court of Justice is for that, is in respect of that. But it was also realized, you know, like I have been emphasizing here in these programs, that human rights are universal. And that's why there is the Universal Declaration
on Human Rights
of Human Rights. And the concept is that really, if you abuse the rights of any human being, you are capable of abusing also the rights of all others. And that if you perpetuate that abuse of human rights, it will also spread and affect others. And so human rights are not limited by borders. They have to be observed everywhere. It therefore puts a responsibility on all peoples of the world to ensure that there is no abuse of rights anywhere. And this is absolutely anywhere. So we must be concerned, and that's why we have been demonstrating when there are abuse of rights in the US. You know, we demonstrate against them. And they have a right to demonstrate if we are abusing our rights here. And similarly all over the globe. Now, so if within nation states there is abuse of rights, which can go to terrible extents sometimes, we have seen even people carry out genocides within their countries. So if there is no mechanism to intervene in such a situation, then how do the people of the world carry out their responsibility of ensuring that there is no abuse of rights anywhere? You know? So people must have also power, those who are outside your country, to say, no, 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 no.
This is too much.
This is not acceptable. And that is the spirit in which the law that established the International Criminal Court was set up, what they call the Rome Statute, the law was made in that regard. Now this law, like all international law, different countries must accept it and sign their commitment to it. So the law is negotiated, is passed, but you must now make sure your citizens understand it and are ready to be,
abide by.
To be part of that. And so it's not an imposition. Every country has a right to be or not to be. In our case, we chose to be. And I think it was the right thing to do. And that's why, you know, if people like Ongwen are arrested, we cannot complain because we have subjected ourselves to that process. Of course, this is a new court. Its mechanisms are still really on test. And I think it is failing in certain respects, especially to deal with the big abusers. It's a court also that has no enforcement arm. It depends
on local enforcement.
On the local systems. I think we need to maybe advance and create mandates for how to, if you have been found suspect of committing an offense, there must be a process that compares your appearance in court. If you are not willing to offer yourself to come to court, just like within national jurisdictions. I told you I was given criminal summons this week.
For failure to turn up.
Because I did not show up in court.
Regardless of your reasons.
On that day, although my lawyer was there and explained why I was unable to be there that day. But that I have been given criminal summons. If I don't go, they have the power to arrest me and produce me before the court where I am supposed to be. But that court does not have that mechanism. And I think those are some of the things that need to be thought about. How, first of all, it can have maybe representations within nations that offer them ability to investigate, because now they rely on whistleblowers or complaints from Security Council, or, you know, referral from, you know, I think they need original capacity to say, by the way, their crimes are not all crimes. They are specific. I think there are 4 crimes, which include one here of disappearances, forced disappearances. Is a crime triable by ICC. Now there is, this has been in Parliament, what people have disappeared, but there is no capacity, you see, inherent capacity on the part of the court to maybe investigate and initiate their own actions that can then, because the whole idea of such a mechanism is also to create a deterrence so that people fear to commit those offenses because they know their consequences. But if the consequences are so remote, if you are likely to get away with committing all these things, like you see all these fellows who grab people and people disappear and nobody has the capacity to follow them because the police which would be following them is the one causing the disappearances. Yes. So who investigates such things? There is no mechanism because the state is the problem, is the criminal. So who investigates this criminal state?
The criminal can't investigate itself.
Yes. So that's why I think there is a need to empower the ICC even more to have those competencies and you know, to have some capacity to compel those who are indicted so that they answer for their crimes.
Okay, and it's also a big topic because because of time we want to go too much, but the government of Uganda had wanted to try him here. I don't know whether the process would have been the same like as it was with ICC. I don't know whether trying him in The Hague served justice to the people of northern Uganda that were affected by the actions of Ongwen, but that will be a topic for another day. As we conclude, Doctor, we had Operation Shuja. Ugandan forces went to Congo with allegations of fighting ADF that they claimed had stormed Kampala and bombed 2 different places. But this very week, we had the same ADF, in quotes, they say, that who stormed in Toroko. And you guys were wondering if you had gone to Congo to look and hunt for the rebels, how comes they advanced behind you and stormed back home? Where is the problem in all this saga?
Well, I think the problem is indeed having a state that is not transparent at all, that as a result we cannot trust. We don't know even whether what it says is the truth or not. Everybody puts a question mark on what they say.
Whatever they say.
That is where the big problem lies. You know, having a state that is not responsible to its people, that is not transparent to its people, that is not accountable to its people. Because even when there was that deployment in the Congo over ADF, you may recall that there was a lot of debate about whether that was the reasonable thing to do. And of course, even that debate came after seeing the attack that took place with the attack with the fighter aircrafts that were bombing at night in the forests and all the fanfare that went with the deployment at that time. That was 1 year ago, you know. And, you know, later on, of course, there were some celebrations. We have finished them, you know. Showed the camps.
They showed the saucepans.
Camps which they had captured and so on. And you know, the same kind of really distrust was still in display, whether people believed what they were saying. You know, most people did not believe what they were saying and kept on saying, but where are these people? Have you captured anybody? Have you? And you remember they had said that they would be there. I think the operation had been for 6 months. And that they would finish the job, and the 6 months ended, they extended, and we hear they are making roads in Congo and so on. So I think that's the main problem, that we are dealing with a regime that we don't trust, a regime whose actions are seen largely to benefit the regime leaders rather than the people of Uganda, because even as they went into Congo, we've been talking about the gold issues. In fact, the main company exporting gold from Uganda has been sanctioned now for exporting blood gold. So, you know, that is the real problem. So even what is happening in Ntoroko and the stories that we hear from the UPDF, they are also not, they cannot be believed as they are given, because one is not sure whether indeed the people that have been shown as killed were ADF, and if they were ADF, where they came from, and you know, how nobody can believe what we hear. And that is because of the nature of the regime and how it has conducted itself in the past. So certainly 1 year on, with the situation in Congo, other things have come up. M23, which used to be in Uganda and which was said to have escaped, took over large parts of Congo, is in fact our neighbor in Kisoro, that border of Kisoro. The people on the Congolese side is M23, so they are our neighbors now. They control whole territory. This is what has now sucked in other East African armies, Congo, Tanzania, Rwanda, Kenya. So the situation that we were going to deal with of ADF has not been resolved, but other situations instead have escalated that are now sucking in all the forces of East Africa. So really, to resolve these, we must again go back to the basics. As we have said, you know, people, if they were bombing Kampala were ADF, you do not just think that you will go to Congo and that will be the end of ADF. If the people who came to attack Ntoroko were ADF, it means where they came from, they are more, in spite of the Ugandans being in Congo, because these ones were able. I had a pathetic statement by the Chief of Defense Forces, General Mbadi, saying that this was not a surprise attack.
So they knew it.
That they knew they were coming. They lowered them. In fact, he said they lowered them. And they were looking the other way so that they come. Even he was demonstrating how they were looking the other way so that they come. This is most ridiculous. Because as I have said, in any case, these are Ugandans. So even if it was true that you lowered them, why would you lower your Ugandans to kill them? Why wouldn't you lower them?
To capture them.
Surround them and force them to
surrender.
To surrender. Why would you mow them down?
As we conclude.
So it's really sad, but as I pointed out earlier, to resolve this, we have to resolve the political question. The political question of whether Ugandans are in control of their country or not. That is the primary question. People must reclaim control over their country, over their power. We must have a transition that creates a new consensus, that creates new institutions that can function in a democratic system. That is what will resolve all this.
All right, thank you, Doctor. It has been a good day, and we've enjoyed, we've learned. As you conclude your closing remarks, World Cup finals are tomorrow. It's France and Argentina. I'm for France. My Portugal went like that. What's your prediction?
Well, my prediction is, frankly, that I don't know whether it's a prediction or even, you know, now my feelings. Though you are right, you know, my team, once the African teams are removed, is always Brazil, because I enjoy the Brazilian football, the way they play. But similarly, I think the Argentinians are playing very well. The French are playing extremely well too. And the French team is, of course, very attractive because it is mainly constituted of, you know...
Actually, it's the opposite.
Yes.
There would be the Bazungus and now the blacks.
Yes, so, you know, the French team is playing very well. And, of course, they are the champions. They are the reigning champions. They are defending their championship. But I think, you know, Argentina
has it today, tomorrow.
Possibly has a slight edge. And maybe more, you know, when you are fighting to get something, you have more drive than the one who already has it. So I think they have
the urge,
more cause, and what withal, what to use in getting it. So I suspect that Argentina is more likely, though it can go really anywhere.
Because this time tournament has got a lot of surprises and shocks.
Absolutely, it's one of the most unpredictable, you know, World Cups that we have seen so far.
All right, thank you very much. We've been with Dr. Kizza Besigye, like he committed. He's here, and it has been a good day. Thank you, our dear viewer, our dear listener, wherever you are across the world. I am Kose Arnold Anthony. Have a lovely day and a lovely week.
Shall we have a program on the eve of you?
First, we are here.
On the eve of Christmas, I am not so sure, but...
you shall give us a recorded maybe
if we are not available on the eve of Christmas, may I use this opportunity to wish every digital follower a Merry, Merry, Merry Christmas and a Happy 2023, a fruitful 2023. God bless you all.
Merry Christmas too, Doctor. I've been Mokose Arnold Anthony, Daddy Tenjo Nabuke on the camera in the control room. It's Jeremiah Muchivi. Lovely week. God bless you.
Beautiful people, you're welcome to the Snap Talk with your girl Teddy Tenjo every Saturday right from 6 to 7.
Naku zino twajirwa flat tummy. Tukyayambala ko ngoyo obutukwata.
Wajana ku body shaming. Speak up. Gendo ba confronting obagambe ekyo kyemukola si kirungi.
Towerabira nti tuli wano ku the alternative dig talk mukwano gwange gwali topic kiri wandiyagadde twogereko. Is it about family?
Nga nze tata wange amanyira nkola n'obuvunanyizibwa nyina bungi era agezaako n'anyamba yambako yanda
naye kumukubira kumubuuzaako noga mama we bali kunzaala.
Is it outside family? Is it society? Oh, could it be relationships?
Come and visit, call me. Simanyanga I miss you bichi. Especially embeera y'obudde si nnungi.
Naye n'omuntu akwagalira mu season yaba takwagala ze nkubuulira.
Just be commenting nga topic yona gyandiyagadde twogereko tujja kwa tujogera kwano ku the alternative dig talk ku share enganzi the Snap Talk.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.